If you've ever watched someone play a historical multiplayer game or a 1v1 in Hoi4, you will know that micro is very important. So today I will show some important shortcuts and strategies that any good player will know and use. To start off, we need to know the setup that everyone uses. What I mean by this is having a front line of basic infantry that are really only meant to hold and delay. This is also called an org wall and uses a cheap template like this one right here. Your actually good divisions, which in this situation are your tanks, will actually be able to push. These could also be special forces, but tanks are far more common, so that's what I will use here. So for the infantry, I've just set up a frontline order, as you can simply see here. But for the tanks, I've done something special. I've done what's called a garrison order with planning. I'll quickly show you how to set it up. First, you need to select your general, which all your tanks are under. Then you do a garrison order and set it in a state which preferably enemy units will never arrive in. So I'll just do Switzerland like here because it's a neutral country. And you don't even have to have any of these assigned. So I just leave it empty, and then I go to the field marshal, which all the tanks are under, and set a front line on the front I will fight in, which here will be Soviets, and just set an offensive line deep into their territory so it will never be cancelled. The point is that you will get planning on all of these selected divisions without the front line moving around the units. This makes microing a lot easier. And I know some people will call this an exploit, but it really isn't. Because you can do the same thing without the garrison order and just have them unassigned. But it's more a quality of life because then you don't have to manually unassign a unit when you put it under the general. So again, it's not really an exploit. Now let's get started on the shortcuts. The most important one which you need to know is the button right here. This is the split button and has the shortcut S on your keyboard. This is very useful for micro because there are many situations where you don't want to have everything selected. And you can also split however many times you want to. So if you have a large stack of 12 or 20 divisions, you can very easily click S multiple times to select less and less units. Each time it selects half of the units rounded up. So for example, if you want to attack 2 tiles at the same time, like I can do right here, you can for example attack with one of the tiles, click S to only select one of them, and click the other tile. I'll come back to more examples later on. Next up is strategic redeployment, also called strat redeploy, which is this button right here with the shortcut B. With this button, your units will move the fastest way possible to a selected tile. It will also go along the railways as it sees fit. However, there are some downsides with this, because there are situations where you don't actually want to move into said tiles. But there is a solution. The shortcut here that people actually use instead of B is Control B. What this does is it uses strat redeploy without changing the path selected. So you're still a lot faster than if you were to move normally. Using Control B is very useful because it speeds up your movement by a lot, possibly saving you from encirclements or getting much needed backup a lot earlier. However, you need to be a bit careful, because when you use strat redeploy, your units are set to 10% of their org, which makes them very weak when they arrive. You will also have issues if you try to strat redeploy out of a tile and you get attacked and defeated when doing so. This is because Hoi4 is a bit buggy, so it may cancel your strat redeploy and start the retreat over again, which might make you slower than if you were to just retreat normally. Either way, strat redeploy is very useful. The next shortcut, which I've also been doing in the background a lot, is the shortcut H, which is the hold command I also found right here. It simply stops all orders on the selected units, which can stop a movement or stop an attack, or whatever you need. Again, I also show this slightly more later on. The last shortcut isn't really a shortcut in the same way, but a shortcut that I personally use to deselect units. I find that in Hoi4, and especially Hoi4 multiplayer, it's pretty laggy and inconsistent when I try to select new units. So what I do is I have a shortcut to open up the political menu, as you might have seen me do a lot in the background here. The shortcut here is Q, and you will see me press it a lot when I play. You don't necessarily need to do the exact same thing as me, but having a method of deselecting others rather than trying to click the right place might save you a lot of time. And you can see if I press like the wrong tiles, I might select new units that I might not have wanted to press. As with all of these shortcuts, you don't necessarily need to know them, but it will save you so much time in a micro situation, and will also remove inconsistencies like having to accurately click a button. If you watch Tommy K or StarCraft or whatever, you will know the importance of having a high APM, actions per minute. To show the importance of shortcuts, I have a clip here from a Bokoan video where you can see him struggle to click the necessary buttons. And I know he plays for fun and with friends, and this clip is specifically picked for this purpose, so don't think that this is meant in any offense to him. So you can see he is getting encircled here from both sides with tanks, and he does sort of notice it, trying to break out in south, but it isn't as fast as he might have wanted it to. So as he sort of notices that it's getting pretty bad. He selects his infantry, as you see. He goes up here, tries to click the select button, misses, goes up, clicks it again, and then tries to click strat redeploy until he realizes that it's too late. Although it might not necessarily have completely saved him in this situation, it definitely would have given him a chance and would have saved him a lot of time. As you saw that there passed a lot of hours. If he would have actually done all this time with a shortcut, he would have done this a lot faster, and it might have saved him. Even if it didn't save him in this situation, there are many other situations where it could have been a lot faster for him. Again, the point of shortcuts is to save time and allow you to do other stuff. Now, before we talk about some strategies, I want to explain the very basic goal of micro. The goal is simply to, in any way possible, kill your opponent's divisions while your divisions survive. The most common method is of course to encircle, but there are other ways like cutting off from supply that are important as well. Again, they should be very intuitive, but I say it so that my next points are clearer. The first strategy or intuition that you should develop is to assess combats before you start them. What I mean by this is that you want to avoid battles that you know you will lose. To do this, you need to develop an intuition, an understanding of how good your divisions are compared to your opponents. For example, here I know that my infantry will probably not be able to push his. But I also know that my tanks will probably push his, and my infantry will probably not push his tanks. Now the second level to this is to also consider the conditions that a battle will face. What I mean by this is to look at the terrain which the combat will happen, and consider how that could change the combat. So for example, this is like terrain where you see that if I push into a forest tile, I know that I will get a penalty, which you can just see here. The same thing goes for where it's across a river, or if one of the sides has less supply, or has lower org or strength. If their division has lower strength, then it might not actually be as strong as they otherwise are. These sort of things are more of an intuition that you develop, but it could definitely be something worth thinking about before you start a risky combat. The second strategy is to stop bad combats. You will likely start battles that you won't win. Everyone does. And the way you can tell if you win or not is not by looking at the number or whether it's green or not, but by looking at whether it goes up or down. Now let me quickly start a battle here that I will probably lose, like this one, where you will probably see that the number is green, and it is a pretty high number. When I let the battle go, you will see the number go down. And whether it goes up or goes down is the most important way to tell if you are winning the battle or not. The only way that this changes is if new units enter the battle. Now the reason why you do want to stop bad clicks is because it lowers your org and strength more than it does your opponent. As I said in my previous point, if your opponent has lower strength or organization than they usually do, you might be able to click them. Also, you don't want to needlessly throw away men or equipment in any situation. The third strategy is called pinning. Simply explained, this just means you start a battle, you click them to delay or win a battle you otherwise would not. Now the first point is to delay their units, because they physically cannot move into your tiles when they are getting attacked. So I just showed right here, this unit will very soon win this battle, and you can see if I hover over it, it says unit will arrive at its destination in 0 hours. However, if I tag over to the Soviets, you will see that if I click them, if I pin them, you will see that they do not move into the tile until this battle is gone. See, it's gone many hours and they're still not in this tile because I am pinning them. So if you need to escape a potential encirclement, you could pin your opponent's divisions to buy yourself time. Now the second point is that when you start a battle, your opponent's units get a multiple combat debuff. Let me start a second battle here and I'll show you. As you see here, these German tanks are attacking into this tile, but when they are attacked themselves, they also get a multiple combat debuff, which means they have half of their attack and half of their defense. Having half of their defense could make them get critted when they otherwise would not get critted, which could make you win a battle you otherwise would not win. Now, one sneaky thing you can do with pinning is to try to stop your opponent from escaping a potential encirclement. Although they can retreat into their own tiles when they get attacked, they have to manually click the tile to retreat if you are pinning them. So for example here, I've set up where they just move into this tile to back up. But let's say I was going for an encirclement where I go for these two tiles. I can now pin them like this. And even though I won't win this battle, they should have gone into this tile a while ago. So what the German player has to do is they have to manually click this tile again for the retreat to actually be enabled. So basically what this does, it forces your opponent to pay attention if they actually gonna go through with the order that they previously set up. So this could give you some sneaky encirclements if they do not pay enough attention. The next strategy is also about requiring your opponent's attention. Now the point of the video is of course for you to micro against another player, although you can also do this against AI as well. So this next strategy is going to rely on your opponent's tunnel vision. If you know that your opponent is microing somewhere, like if they try to encircle you or something, you could do the bare minimum to stop it, and then you go somewhere else on the front, and you try to go for an encirclement here. If they don't pay enough attention to the entire front, or they don't have enough hands or APM, you could get some free encirclements by looking at other places on the front. Now this strategy sort of challenges your opponent's micro against your own, so I would not recommend doing this if you are significantly worse at micro. The last strategy that I will talk about here is slightly more advanced, but it is something you will see in tank versus tank micro. Now tanks are pretty special compared to everything else in Hoi4, because they are typically a lot stronger attacking than they are defending. If we also take into account planning, which you should have in every combat, you will have more stats attacking than you will have defending, since you can't retain any entrenchment when you are moving. What this effectively means is that when you have the possibility, you should always click their tanks with your own. The only exception to this is what I've talked about previously, where certain conditions, like terrain, would change the outcome. So in practice, this means that whenever your opponent has a tank division on a plains tile or a desert tile, you should always click them. You will see this a lot on Barb or in North Africa, where these conditions are pretty common. Even on Forest, you can probably still click their tanks, but again, conditions and your intuition between how strong your units are compared to them will probably matter more. To show a small example of how micro could work in this situation, I will try to go for this encirclement in the north and try to use some of the principles I've explained here. So if I try to go for an encirclement here, I will attack the units surrounding this tile. And you will also see that I should probably even stop them myself, but let's quickly go over to Soviets before I do anything else. I do notice that they will try to go for these tiles. So for example, I can maybe move some units over to get more reinforcements using Control B to move over here. I can maybe even pin these units as well by attacking them from other sides, maybe even from the pocket themselves, but it's a bit risky to attack from the pocket. I will also go attack with it from the south here with infantry. The infantry will probably not be enough on their own, so I might be able to, or I might need to try to counter with my own tanks. But I only have 2 tanks, so I should probably split them up using the S command, attacking one south, one north. And I should probably also maybe even retreat with some of the infantry to try to get out. Maybe even using Control B. It's a bit buggy, does not always work. Yeah, okay, it doesn't work right now, but you can do Control B to move even faster out if it works. Might not always work, but should. And if I start the time now, you will see that I am trying to pin these units. My tanks should be able to crit these. And when I let the time go, yeah, at least it's delaying at least. And you see, I got some of the units into this tile, and I will get more units into this tile just because I pinned. So you'll see I managed to stop this encirclement, which probably would have actually gotten through by using some of these micro strategies that I've shown. Now, if I go over to Germany, again, I can use this last principle where I know my tanks will probably click these, and they're also in another combat already. So doing this, I will probably win within like 2 hours. Yeah, you saw I immediately won that battle because it's on a plain style and they're already attacking somewhere else. So to quickly summarize this video, you should learn and use shortcuts to become better at micro because it saves you a lot of time and gives you more APM, which Tommy K yaps a lot about. And you should be more careful and also active when considering what and where to click. You should develop a pretty good intuition by just playing more, and through this intuition you should know what, where and when to attack, and maybe some strategies to trick your opponent into getting some sneaky encirclements and winning the long-term battle. I will be streaming a bit in the coming weeks here on YouTube or Twitch, so if you have any questions about the stream, about this video, about anything else, you can come and talk to me there. Otherwise, the comment section and the Discord is open. I have a Discord link in the description below. I have also started memberships for those that want to support me even further. And if you did like this video otherwise, please do subscribe and enable notifications because it does actually help me. Only a few percentage of you are actually subscribed, which is pretty weird, like you guys are weird. Anyways, I will see you next time.